Solitaire Caesar, a solitaire game published by White Dog Games. It is available in a professionally printed version, or you can buy the file like I did and you build your own copy. This rudimentary looking copy that you see here is the one that I crafted, simply printing the map, printing instructions and player aids, mounting the counters on cardboard from a cereal box, and then also making my own elegant, professional-looking player aids. Because there are a couple of things in the production that I find a little bit surprising, one of which is that the player aid has some things that you really need, but then also a lot of charts and things for variant rules, for optional rules, but does not have some of the truly essential information, which then I place on these flashcards here. It's a solitaire game. You are the Caesars. You are the state of Rome from its foundation to its decline and well beyond. The standard game lasts 18 turns. Each turn represents a century in Roman history, and I don't get it, because just there is no political entities that I can think of that survives, expands, shrinks, and again survives and has any sort of continuity from the beginning of Roman history to the Renaissance. There is a standard scenario, which I guess is more like the real rise and fall of the Roman Empire, that lasts 11 turns, and that is the one that I played. There are even shorter scenarios. There is a quick scenario about Justinian and the reconquest of the West. But if you want to play the full campaign game, you can, but I don't, because I don't see the historical purpose. So I just, this the disclaimer, what I played is the big game about Rome proper. So you're Caesar, not the dude, not that guy, but you are the institution of Roman power. You have tokens representing Roman control and then representing cities. Cities there will be a bunch of them at the beginning of the game on the map. They're not necessarily yours. You send legions there, then you place a control marker. And that is how, by the way, you score points. The only thing that scores you points in the game is the number of cities that you control. At the end of each turn, you count them. Each city you control is worth a point. You tally the total using counters on that track there. And at the end of the scenario, you see how well or how poorly you did. You have legions. All legions are the same. The game is very basic, a little bit abstract or a lot abstract. It keeps things simple. The legions will be fighting sometimes against just local population as you expand from Rome and you take control of cities that were just minding their own darn business at the beginning of the game, but now they are Romans. Hooray! Hooray for you, I guess, not necessarily for them. But then you have invaders, the enemies that will come from different locations on the map and will try to attack you, take control of your cities, or destroy those cities. Not a fan of the terminology. The invaders are called barbarians, and that's a very loaded term. Everybody's a barbarian in somebody else's eyes. The Romans were barbarians in the eyes of the Greek, for example. But I guess this is from the perspective of the Romans, so that's how they would see these invaders. The invaders are divided into two categories, and again, all invaders within that category act exactly the same. You have, again, not a fan of the terminology, they are simply called civilized and uncivilized. So uncivilized. Nomadic would have been better, I think, for these people, because all that they do is that these people, the so-called uncivilized, the nomadic barbarians, they destroy cities when they take control of an area that has a city. These are the barbarians with the shield. They say, we like the place, and they take control of the city. Now, each turn starts with the building of a random phase. You simply roll two six-sided dice. The game only uses six-sided dice, and one gives you the line, one gives you the column, or the other way around. You cross-reference the results, and then you place a city in that area in case there isn't one. Maybe because there never was one, maybe because somebody destroyed, oops, a city. But that's how you start a turn, by adding potentially a new random city to the board. Then you generate Roman income. You look at the player aid for the turn track table. In each turn, there's a lot of information. First, you will receive talents, which is the income that you produce. It goes up when your empire is strong, and then the crunch arrives and it gets really bad. And this, of course, is when in later centuries you're just holding on to your possessions and you lose the strategic initiative, to sound a little bit technical, but you just don't have a lot of money to do much, and the barbarians or the invaders keep pushing and pounding. So you have talents, good for you, and you use these talents to build stuff. You can spend a talent to build a legion, which you place in a area that you control. You can spend 2 talents to build a city in an area that you control that has a red name. So, Edgy, for example, it isn't a city there. I can spend 2 talents to build a city. Areas that have white names like Armenia or Albania, those take 3 talents to build a city there, or Ratia. And that's one of the things that you can do. Actually, these are the things that you can do with your income. Build legions and or build cities in various locations. Word to the wise, there are cities on the board at the beginning of the game that are just waiting for you to take control of. At least that's the way they look for you. They look in your perspective. And so maybe that's easier than to spend all the money building cities in the north that then will be taken from you. So after you generate the income, you conduct Roman actions, which again may include building these things. The other actions that you can do is to move your legions. And you can do these things in any order you want. You can move a legion, do something, fight, build a city there, build another city somewhere, move it a little bit, move a legion. Build a legion, move the legion, build a city, move the legion again, fight, etc., etc., etc. Complete flexibility there. When you enter a location, unless it's a location you already control, you gotta fight. If you enter a location that you don't control, that has nothing, then you're fighting against the local population. You simply roll a die, and if the location is unoccupied, it becomes Roman on a roll of 1 to 5, and then you simply add a control marker there. If you roll a 6, the local population actually resists, and you lose a legion. See this pair that I made? If you roll within that range, in that circumstance, you achieve a victory, otherwise you lose a legion. If the location that you're entering with your legion is not under your control and has a city though, then you roll a die. 1 to 4, you take control of the city, and 5 or 6, you lose a legion. If there is an enemy army in a location that you're entering, like so, then you roll a die. 1 to 3, you win, and so for each number that you roll like that, you eliminate an enemy army. 5 to 6, 4, 5, 6, booyah, you lose it. And if there is a city and an army in a location that you enter, but pretty much you had to defeat both of them sequentially, starting from the army. So you need the 1 to 3. Suppose that you're successful, you eliminate that, then you still need to take control of the city. Roll again, and you need a 1 to 4. If you don't roll that, you're eliminated. This is combat. It's as simple as that. It's not particularly subtle in terms of tactics, I guess, but it is interesting in terms of, well, gameplay. It's more of a combat about attrition, but then each turn represents a century, so you can imagine that would make sense. You don't see the specific battle, you see large campaigns. And sometimes you had to throw waves of soldiers, of legions to achieve something, to achieve very little, to achieve a lot. There's randomness there, but precisely because you roll a ton of times, then things even themselves out a little bit. So this is for the Roman phase. Build a random city, generate income, and spend income to build stuff, and then also move legions in any order. Hopefully, at the end of that, you will be controlling a bunch of areas, and a bunch of areas will have, hopefully, again, some legions there to protect them. I'm gonna pile them up on the borders because then now the invaders come. During the Barbarian phase, you will generate new army groups, so you will move them and they will attack. You will roll 2 6-sided dice. And the highest result is the number of enemy armies that arrive belonging to the group indicated on the turntable. So when I roll those 2 dice for enemy attacks, say I rolled a 6, then there will be 6 Berber units. In the second turn, I rolled a 3 and a 1 during the enemy check, then 3 units will come from the north. Later I roll a 4 and a 2, then 4 units come from the north. As you can see, for most of the game it will be from the north and the steppe that the enemies will come. So the highest die tells you how many enemies arrive. The bottom here tells you if they are civilized or uncivilized, to use the terminology in the game. If they come from the areas indicated here, like Arabia and Berber or Parthia, for example, in this turn, then they are civilized, so they will take control of cities when they steal one from you, or they just step in a location with a city. Otherwise, if they are not in that range, they are nomadic and they will destroy cities in areas that they take control of. So the highest die that we rolled tells us how many come from the location indicated there. The other die tells you how many come from a location still to be determined. You roll a third die, and now this time you look at the numbers here on the reinforcement points for the enemy, and then you see that the north has 1, the steppe has 2 or 3, Parthia has 4, and then we have Arabia that has 5, and Berber that has 6. So also for that random result, there is 50% chance that they will come from somewhere around there. It's possible that when you roll, you obtain the same location where the highest group is coming because of the schedule indicated here. That may happen. Or it may be a different location. That means that each turn enemies will arrive from 1 or 2 different locations. The highest group from a location that you can predict thanks to the turn track, the other one likely from up here, but it may be from somewhere else. When the group arrives, suppose that we have 5 of these people that are coming from here. So you have that stack. The idea is that they will try to go to areas that they're not controlled by other barbarians, and they will drop 1 counter in areas that they control. The first check that you do when you move them automatically is that they want to go either in a non-barbarian area or in an area next to an area not controlled by barbarians. So right now they come from here, that's all they can do. Now they may want to go here, they may want to go here. They're both not controlled by barbarians, same chance. Then you assign the same chance to the 2 possibilities. 1 to 3 they go here, 4 to 6 they go here. You roll the die, oh, they decide to go this way. You leave 1 behind because that was empty and they go here. Now they don't go back unless they're forced to, so we have the 2 locations not barbarian controlled. We roll a die, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. Oh, we rolled a 6. We drop 1 behind, and they go here, and they meet a legion. And then, well, then we resolve combat, and this time we resolve combat based on this, what we find on this beautiful play right here. When they're fighting against a legion, they roll 4 to 6, so they win, and you eliminate the legion. Otherwise, if they roll 1 to 3, one of their armies is eliminated. These C lines here, communication lines, as opposed to land lines that are yellow, these blue ones are C communications. They have no effect on combat or movement of the legions. The only effect that they have is that when a barbarian army attacks across one of those, it gets a -1 on their die roll. Which means, interesting enough, that Sicily and Rhodes are the safest location on the map, the easiest to defend. And Britain too, technically, but then again, these people that keep coming from the north, the advantage that you get from that being an island isn't nearly as good. Here, because of location and connections, just the best spots on the map to control. That's the way it is. That's what the game tells us. And so basically they will keep going until there's only one left in a location that they take control of, and so they sit there. Otherwise, they keep moving until they're all destroyed. Suppose that here, for example, they roll a die that kills one of them. There's still more, so we keep rolling. Now they roll a result that kills my legion and remove the control. One of them will sit there, but we still have two, and so that one wants to go. Well, either here, because they didn't go there yet, or here, or here. They're all good, because they're not barbarian controlled. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we roll a 4. And so that one goes there, and it stops moving, because we stop moving either when only one is left in a location where it can stay, or because every army in the enemy group is eliminated. The nomadic groups work exactly the same, but if they take control of an area that has a city, they also destroy the city. They really don't like those. Plumbing, poof, not their thing. This is how you play Solitaire Caesar. Play for a number of turns based on the scenario. Each turn, build a random city, create new legions, build new cities, move your legions around, try to take control of areas, withstand the constant invasions from all directions, but mainly from up there. And at the end of the game, the number of cities that you were able to control during the game will tell you your score. So the game is fairly abstract, or a lot abstract, starting from, again, the strange period covered of about 18 centuries, and I don't see any continuity there. It's pretty abstract, it's pleasant, it's enjoyable. I just feared that it may be a little too abstract for some hardcore wargamers out there. And there are just a couple of these strange decisions in the production. The language I don't like very much, the player rates, I don't think they really mirror what's most important. Some strange things, such as, well, the turn track is really, really tiny. The information there, if you put a marker on the turn track, then you cannot see the information. So you put it on top. After that, you switch it to the top of the next thing. Just all these little strange things that, I don't know, I feel could have been polished a little bit. But when you get past that, gameplay is actually quite interesting. Sometimes it does fall along historical lines, and so it's quite pleasant if when around the 4th or 5th century all of a sudden you lose the Western Empire and you realize that all of your possessions are in the East, and that was a nice touch, I thought, but that doesn't always happen. Luckily enough, otherwise the game becomes scripted. But the general idea is you start small, you need to expand, you need then, you reach the acme of your civilization, and then you need to protect it as people keep pounding you from, I was going to say from all directions, but not really, just from the north mainly. It's an interesting overall arc, which has some variety thanks to the massive randomness. On one hand, again, there's enough randomness so that at some point you'll have your little Roman cities having a heroic defense and taking down a large number of enemy groups, and on the other hand, you have an enemy little group that is gonna take down half of your army. Massive numbers of legions are gonna disappear. So that element doesn't bother me. And yet, overall, you will have times where, say, if you roll very high numbers of invaders earlier in the game for a couple of turns, that's going to be very tough. If you roll really no numbers the first couple of turns, then you can build up enough momentum. Then you can spend your talents entirely in defense. And then the second half of the game becomes considerably easier, and also then maybe a little bit anticlimactic, because if you then later in the game you have to spend your talents to build cities or to take cities when the opponents are also attacking you massively, then there's just not much that can happen. So there's this weird paradox. If you're doing well, the game feels a lot less tense in the second half, and also a little less interesting because you're just building more legion and sitting them there. But again, overall, I'm talking about all these small things that annoy me a little bit, I guess, but I don't want it to miss the picture, but overall, I liked it. I enjoyed it. It's just that I think it could be even better if maybe it had a structure that lent itself to a little more variety, maybe a little more chrome. By the way, there are extra rules and optional rules that you can add to, if you want to add more chrome, create more variety. There is, for example, a way to resolve combat in a single die roll using a combat table, which, by the way, I found pretty hard to read. And in that case, you simply see how many legions you have, how many barbarians you have, find the right column, roll a die, and you're told how many units are left there. But actually, I like rolling multiple times, although it takes longer to play, because it does add to the tension. There are 4 enemies and 3 legions, and I roll for them, and I lose a legion, then I roll again, and they lose a barbarian, and they lose another one, then I lose another one myself. Seeing these piles going down gradually, it just creates an interesting narrative, a micro narrative, and just adds to the tension. But if you want to resolve it by reading a really small print, hard to decipher combat table, you have that. So there are also all these variants for the game, none of which I used. I tried to use the combat table once. I read them and they just didn't seem all that interesting. I believe that I just like the cleanness, the simplicity, the linearity of the basic game. It is a game that is solitaire, so it is great for these days of social distancing in early 2020. You can also play cooperatively with your family. I haven't played it with my daughters yet, but I could definitely play with them. I don't see any problem why this would be too complicated for them. So it's a game that has its advantages. You build it at home. I love print and play games. It's pleasant. It's just that I feel it could be so much better. The production had been polished a little bit more, maybe a little more playtesting. Some ways of making, I don't know, giving you a little more decisions here and there, a little more control without making the game a lot more complex, because ultimately I like its simplicity. So that's my assessment. It's a pleasant game. Probably too light for many of you, probably too abstract, but enjoyable. You can see the rise and fall of the Roman Empire in under 2 hours for sure. If you play with my version, which is the basic version of multiple rolls for each combat, you can probably play in less, maybe in an hour if you use just a roll for each combat. But definitely you can play multiple times in an evening, and it's just you, so you can stay up late and it's not a problem. So Solitaire Caesars is simple, it's linear, maybe too linear, maybe too simple, maybe too abstract. Production could be a little bit better, but overall, I want to make sure that I express this point clearly. Despite all of these minor elements here and there, it's a game that I enjoyed.